Today I'd like to talk a little bit about a guy that you probably have heard before. His name is Otzi. He's a mummy actually. 5,300-year-old mummy that was found in the north of Italy near the border with Austria. Now in 1991. Now Otzi, I suppose that a lot of you guys know that he lived exactly in that transition period between the Stone Age and the Copper Age. And we know that because of some objects that were found with him. And that's the guy I'd like to talk about a little bit here today. So for 10 years, from 1991 to 2001, there was a big mystery regarding his death. Nobody knew for sure how he had died. A lot of scientists thought that he had died of hypothermia regarding the good quality of the clothing he had on. Despite they were primitive clothing, they were actually very high quality clothing. Some people even speculated that Otzi was probably a shepherd that got lost and stranded in the mountains and died there. Some other people believed that he was a trader that again got lost and stranded in the mountains and died there. And some believed that he was a blacksmith, that he used to work with copper and smelting copper because of some items, because of that copper axe that was found with him. But then in 2001, his body was studied in more detail, and some deeper and more careful analysis actually revealed that Otzi had a violent death. He had a broken arrow stuck in his left shoulder that really did some real big damage in his back. Also, they noticed that he had a real deep slash in one of his hands. I can't remember if it was either his left hand or right hand, but it was, the kind of slash, the kind of cut which you get when you're trying to protect yourself from someone who's attacking you with a blade, with a flint knife, with an axe, whatever. And some further analysis also revealed that he had different types of blood spread on his coat. So all of that reveals that Otzi actually had some real violent death. Now, we will never know for sure how Otzi died. We can only speculate. Okay, we can only try to imagine how his last minutes, his last hours and days here on earth were like. But because of the type of gear that he had on him was also preserved, we can have a very good idea of what he could accomplish with his primitive gear and what we nowadays with our modern gear can accomplish in terms of the needs and of the tasks that we have to take care of when we are out there in the bush. Because regardless, it was a 5,300-year-old man or a guy living nowadays, breathing, as long as it's a human body, it will be the same human body. The guy 5,300 years ago and a guy nowadays are the same person when it comes to the needs of our body. So what I want to do here today is I want to look at what kind of gear he had on him when he died and what tasks he could accomplish, what aspects he could take care of with that gear, and what can we do nowadays with the gear that we have regarding all those needs that I have already mentioned. So let's see how it worked out for him. Now, when we look at Otzi's gear, especially at his belt, it reveals some really interesting aspects regarding the way he thought out his gear, the way his gear was conceived. Now, Otzi himself was applying to his gear a concept that us Nowadays, ourselves, people who go to the bush, we apply when it comes to what kind of gear and what type of gear we bring with us to the bush. Now I'm talking about the multifunctionality aspect of your gear. So the more functions, the more aspects your gear can take care of, the better. Actually, that's not a modern concept. That's a pretty old one as an analysis of his gear reveals. Because when we look at his belt more closely, we will see that it was used not only to keep his leggings up, suspended, because, you know, walking in the snow, it would probably soak in moist, become heavy, then would tend to slide down his legs. So by attaching his leggings to his belt, he would prevent that from happening. When we look more closely into his belt, we will see that it was also a pouch that was used as a survival kit. Now inside his pouch he had some items which could be used as pieces of a survival kit to help you take care of your survival needs in the bush. Outside his belt he had a flint dagger on one side and he had a pressure flaker on the other side. Inside his belt what he actually had was three pieces of flint, two blades, one used for, you know, carving wood, probably cutting meat, and another smaller one which was probably used for more detailed carving, that kind of stuff. And he had a nail made of silex which he used to puncture wood and do that kind of stuff probably. He also had a piece of fungus that could be used as tinder to help him start his fire, or be used as medicine, as an antibiotics, or to help him treat some worms and some parasites that he had, because you know, they found out that he had some parasites in him. In his belt they also found a nail, pretty much like a needle made of bone, ibex bone, which you know, he probably used to help him repair his clothes and his gear. One interesting aspect I'd like to talk a little bit about is when it comes to the way Otzi would carry a fire and make fire. Actually, like I said before, they found no pyrite in his gear, despite the traces that were found, the traces of it that were found in his survival kit. But they did find a birch bark container in which he was carrying a live coal. So maybe because of his ability to start fires using live coals, he didn't really have to have a pyrite with him. But again, this is only speculation. We don't know. We're just guessing out here, because he might have lost his pyrite somewhere else. Anyway, because we know that he sometime in the past carried a pyrite on him because of those traces left in his belt. But anyway, he didn't have any of it with him when he died. So that probably indicates that he didn't need any pirate as long as he, had a live coal, which he did when he died. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this, it's because here in Bushcraft-Survival School, this is actually a technique we teach our students in the intermediate level. On the intermediate level, we teach them how to make fire in a primitive way and transport fire in the bush. And so that gives them an idea of how hard, how difficult it is to keep that little ember, that little coal burning, as you have to navigate in the bush. And I was glad and surprised to see that that's actually how Otzi started his fire and carried his fire in the bush, or out there in the mountains where he was when he died. So when we think in terms of those objects, of the gear that he was carrying with him when he died, and what aspects regarding his survival he could take care of with those gear, we see that for shelter he had not only the clothes on his back, but that grass cloak that he would put on his body, his shoulder, and would keep him pretty warm. And according to some recent scientific research, it has proven to be very effective when it comes to the insulation for a real cold environment. And I have heard that grass, dead grass, dry grass, and straw is actually one of the best natural material for insulation, and it has been used for all that long. So let's say that he could take care of shelter by wearing the skin, the leather clothes that he had on, and this grass cloak that he also carried on him. And not to mention the fact that he could make fire to help him regulate his body temperature, and that's definitely a really crucial aspect of his survival in a cold environment where he was. Now, water, I imagine it wouldn't be much of a big problem, considering that he was in a place surrounded by ice and snow. So as long as he could make fire, he would have all the water he wanted, because he would be able to melt down the ice and in the snow to get his water. For food, well, he had his bow and arrows. He had actually 14 arrows which hadn't been completed. He hadn't finished them all. Only 2 of them were good to be used. And apparently his bow was, I think it was either broken. I don't know if it was broken when he died, or if it broke sometime during this 5,300 year period. But the fact is, he had weapons that would help him secure meat and put something in his belly. Now, a really interesting aspect of his gear has to do with the blades that he had on him. Because again, like a modern man nowadays, regardless where you are, either in Europe, in the States, here in Brazil, or anywhere else in the world, when we go out to the bush, we usually have 2 or 3 types of blades. We usually have a heavy-duty blade for heavy cuts, for splitting wood, for like a machete, an axe. That's what people usually bring with them to the bush for heavier tasks. And we have like knives, and pocket knives, smaller blades for other different types of tasks that, don't require such a big and bulky blade, like a machete or an axe. When it comes to the blades that Otzi carried on him, we know that he had that dagger, hanging on one side, and he had a flint knapper. I'm sorry. He didn't have a flint knapper. He was a flint knapper. He had a pressure flaker, that's what I mean, hanging on the other side to help him restore the edge on his knife. because he would probably use that knife to skin animal, to cut meat, cut fruit, for example, maybe cut some magnum moss, or prepare the tinder, his fungus for the fire. You know, general tasks that could be accomplished with a smaller blade. Not to mention he had in his pouch, his survival kit, he had 3 other smaller blades, like I said before, that flint awl for, you know, drilling wood possibly, and he had 2 other blades for more detailed carving and, you know, another extra blade. When we think in terms of the tasks that could be accomplished with those several blades that he carried on him, it's difficult not to think of the multifunction pocket knives that we have nowadays, the Victorinox pocket knives, for example, these multifunctional, multi-tool items that we carry nowadays. And I was thinking that, man, just one of those, you know, more simple models of Victorinox would totally take care of all the aspects he was trying to cover with the blades that he had on him, the smaller blades that he had on him. And I'm pretty sure that Otzi would probably be very glad, you know, if he was given one of those pocket knives. Just kidding. But so that's what I want to, you know, point out when it comes to his blades, that he had those different profiles for different tasks that could be accomplished, that needed to be accomplished out there in the bush with his blades. As a repairing tool, he had a needle which was made of ibex bone. He used to repair his clothes and that kind of stuff. You know, again, every time we are out there in the bush, I and a lot of people out there, you guys probably have repairing needles and repairing sewing gear on you, like thread and that kind of stuff. I myself always carry at least 2 or 3 heavy-duty needles and waxed thread, because that really helps me, you know, repairing my gear. And a lot of times when I was out there in the bush, I had to repair my gear. It was the strap, like a backpack strap that was coming off, or I had something on my canteen, the attachment strap on my canteen was coming off, or maybe even my clothes were, you know, tearing apart. I needed to repair my gear, and it is always important to have some kind of tool, some kind of gear that will help you accomplish that need. And we see then Otzi had his needle, his bone needle, to help him take care of that too. And finally, when it comes to his first aid kit, we also know that he had that the fungus that would help him take care of the parasites that he had in his body, and that could also be used as some kind of natural antibiotics to help him treat some disease, some stuff that some disease that he probably had. It's not very much of a sophisticated first aid kit, but one thing that we know in his hair, magnum moss is also common, and it is a natural antiseptic material that was used as bandage, even as toilet paper. So he probably used that to help him take care of his first aid needs, let's put it this way. And although he didn't have any magnum moss with him, it was most likely a resource that was available for him, and a resource which he probably used.